Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world where words are often seen as just a tool for communication. We use them to express ourselves, to make decisions, and to navigate the complexities of life. But what happens when those words are absent? When silence takes the place of the conversation that is desperately needed? Let me tell you, your silence is hurting them deeply. When we choose silence, we are often unaware of the emotional damage it causes. Silence can be a sign of apathy, indifference, or even neglect. And though it may seem passive, it is active in its harm. People are left in the dark, searching for answers, seeking understanding, and longing for anyone to acknowledge their pain, their confusion, their frustration. You see, words can heal. A kind word can lift the soul from despair. A single sentence can bring clarity to a confused mind. Yet silence breeds isolation. It can make someone feel invisible. When we refuse to speak, when we withhold comfort or correction, we are telling them that their feelings don't matter, that their struggles are unworthy of our attention. Think about the relationships that matter most to you, whether with family, friends, or colleagues. How often has silence been the source of tension? A failure to speak up in a time of need, a refusal to offer words of encouragement or support, can drive a wedge between people. Without communication, misunderstandings grow like weeds. What was once a minor issue turns into a silent chasm, slowly eroding the trust and connection that once existed. But let me be clear, silence is not always a neutral act. It speaks volumes. Silence can be an expression of avoidance, a shield that we hide behind to protect ourselves from discomfort. But in doing so, we ignore the very real pain of those who need our voices. They need to hear us say, "I see you, I understand. You are not alone." How many times have we seen someone hurting, yet we remain quiet because we fear saying the wrong thing? Or perhaps we assume that time will heal, that the problem will just go away. But time doesn't always heal without intervention. Sometimes the healing begins with our willingness to speak, to confront, and to engage. We have a responsibility not only to ourselves but to each other to speak when it matters, to offer words of comfort when silence would be the easier option, to confront the difficult conversations head on rather than letting the silence fester. We must also remember that silence can create confusion. A person who is left without direction will often be left wondering, unsure of what to do next, unsure of where they stand with you. Our silence may make them question whether we care, whether we value them, or whether we even notice the pain they're in. The truth is, your silence has a cost, and that cost is the emotional well-being of those around you. When we speak, we have the power to heal. When we choose to engage, we invite understanding and growth. The words we speak or fail to speak can be the difference between connection and division. So I challenge you today, speak up. Say the things that matter. Don't let fear of conflict or discomfort silence your voice. Don't wait for the perfect moment, for the right word. Sometimes simply offering a listening ear or saying, "I'm here for you," can change the course of someone's life. Your silence is not neutral. It is not benign. It is hurting someone deeply. But your words, your compassionate, intentional words can change that. Speak with purpose. Speak with love. Speak with courage. And watch as healing begins in the spaces where silence once reigned. Words have a unique and profound power in our lives. They have the ability to build and destroy, to uplift or to wound. When spoken with care and intention, words can heal deep emotional wounds, restore broken relationships, and give hope in moments of despair. They are the bridge that connects hearts, the tool that enables us to understand one another. But what happens when those words are absent? When we choose silence instead of speech? The power of silence, much like the power of words, cannot be underestimated. In moments of need, when someone is suffering, confused, or uncertain, silence can become a deep and painful absence. It can leave a person feeling unheard, unseen, and unimportant. They may not even be asking for grand solutions or advice, but simply for recognition, for their feelings to be acknowledged, and for someone to show they care. Yet when we withhold words, when we remain silent in the face of that need, we may unintentionally send a message of neglect or indifference. It is in this silence that the wounds of isolation grow and feelings of abandonment take root. Silence, though seemingly passive, is never neutral. It communicates something, even if we don't intend for it to. It's a form of communication in itself. But it often communicates pain, confusion, or distance. In relationships, silence can erode trust. When we fail to speak, when we avoid the difficult conversations or refrain from offering comfort, we allow misunderstandings to take hold. People who feel neglected by our silence may begin to question their worth or our commitment to the relationship. They may wonder if their pain matters to us or if we even care enough to step out of our own discomfort to offer a simple word of kindness. But silence doesn't just cause harm to others, it also harms us. In the spaces where silence thrives, unspoken truths fester. The longer we withhold what needs to be said, the harder it becomes to express ourselves. Our silence keeps us trapped in a cycle of avoidance and emotional withdrawal, preventing us from addressing issues that require resolution. And as we withdraw, so too do our connections with others. Relationships that are not nurtured through communication wither and fade. In contrast, words have the power to open up the heart, to bring light into dark places, and to break down the walls of fear and uncertainty. Sometimes just a few simple words of encouragement or understanding can turn a person's world around. A single sentence, when spoken with sincerity, can provide the clarity someone needs to take the next step or make a decision. Words can be the healing balm for emotional wounds, the salve for the deep scars left by loneliness and pain. Yet the power of words is not just about what we say, but also about when we choose to speak. It's not enough to wait for the perfect moment to speak or for everything to align perfectly before we offer our thoughts. If we truly care for someone, if we value the relationship, we must find the courage to speak up in times of uncertainty and hardship. When we remain silent, hoping the situation will resolve on its own, or fearing we might say the wrong thing, we fail to provide the support that is so desperately needed. It is important to understand that sometimes the words we withhold are more harmful than any words we might fear to speak. Silence in the face of someone else's need for comfort or guidance is often a silent message of disregard. We must remember that people need to hear from us, especially in their darkest moments. Silence may feel safer to us, but it only deepens the sense of aloneness for the one who needs our voice. At the same time, words spoken without thought or care can also cause harm. So we must recognize the balance between knowing when silence is the right choice and when speaking is necessary for healing. There is power in knowing when to speak with intention, with understanding, and with love. And in those moments, when our words are chosen carefully and spoken with sincerity, they become the very thing that can change someone's life, provide them comfort, and offer them the connection they so desperately need. The power of both words and silence comes down to our responsibility as human beings to engage with one another. Communication is not just an exchange of information, it is the foundation of trust, empathy, and connection. When we speak, we affirm the value of the relationship. When we choose silence at critical moments, we risk the destruction of that bond. And it's in those moments of silence that the power of our words becomes even clearer. The right words spoken at the right time can transform lives and relationships, while the absence of words can leave scars that may never fully heal. Silence, while often seen as the absence of sound, can have a profound emotional impact, especially when it arises in moments of need. When we choose not to speak in times of pain or distress, the emotional toll on the other person can be deeply felt. In these moments, silence becomes more than just quiet. It becomes a void that echoes with feelings of rejection, confusion, and isolation. The absence of words can leave someone feeling as though their pain is invisible, that their emotions are not valid, or that they are unworthy of attention or care. People who are struggling emotionally, whether through grief, anxiety, disappointment, or loneliness, often look to others for comfort and support. They may not always know how to express their need for help, but the desire for connection, for being heard and understood, is a universal part of the human experience. When silence replaces communication, it creates a sense of emotional abandonment. The person in need may interpret the silence as a form of neglect, a message that their emotions are not important enough to be acknowledged. This can deepen their sense of loneliness and make their emotional burden feel even heavier. For those who are already vulnerable or in distress, silence can amplify their internal struggles. It can trigger feelings of worthlessness or anxiety, as they may begin to question whether they have done something wrong to cause the silence, or whether they are unlovable or undeserving of compassion. Silence can also create an emotional distance, one that makes it harder for individuals to feel connected to those around them. Even when they long for reassurance or comfort, the quiet can make them feel more distant, more invisible, and more uncertain of their place in the relationship. The emotional impact of silence isn't always just about what isn't said. It can also be about the lack of engagement or empathy. When we stay silent in the face of someone else's hurt, we inadvertently communicate that we are unwilling or unable to enter into their emotional space. This can feel like a rejection or an emotional abandonment, which can erode the trust and intimacy that are crucial for healthy relationships. In contrast, a few words spoken with care, compassion, and understanding can help heal these wounds and bridge the gap that silence can create. Silence in times of emotional need can be incredibly damaging, leading to feelings of neglect, confusion, and isolation. Our voices, when chosen with empathy and love, have the power to counteract this emotional impact. Through our words, we can show others that they are seen, heard, and valued, and that their emotions matter. When we speak, we offer not just communication, but connection. We provide the reassurance that, even in their pain, they are not alone. Communication is the lifeblood of any relationship, whether personal or professional. It is the primary means by which we connect with one another, build trust, and navigate the complexities of our shared lives. Without effective communication, relationships cannot thrive. When communication falters, distance grows, misunderstandings flourish, and emotional walls begin to form. The very essence of connection is rooted in the exchange of thoughts, feelings, and intentions. It is through communication that we learn about each other's needs, hopes, and fears. It is the tool through which we share our joys, work through conflicts, and provide comfort in times of sorrow. Human beings are inherently social creatures wired to seek connection. At the heart of this connection is communication, the way we express our thoughts, share our emotions, and engage with others in meaningful dialogue. Communication, in its many forms, helps us relate to one another and fosters understanding. Whether it's through spoken words, written language, or even nonverbal cues like body language and facial expressions, the act of sharing is fundamental to creating bonds and sustaining relationships. When communication is consistent and open, it deepens our emotional connection with others. It allows us to feel seen, heard, and understood, which is one of the most powerful experiences we can have as human beings. On the other hand, when communication breaks down, it can cause feelings of isolation and disconnection. Silence in a relationship can be deafening. It often signals a lack of engagement, a failure to acknowledge each other's emotional presence. In these moments, when words are withheld or avoided, the relationship begins to suffer as trust erodes and emotional intimacy weakens. But communication isn't just about speaking, it's equally about listening. Active listening is the foundation of meaningful connection. To listen is to engage with the speaker's words, to understand the emotions behind them, and to respond with empathy and care. When we listen with intention, we make others feel valued and respected. It shows them that their thoughts and feelings matter, that they are worthy of our attention. Conversely, when we fail to listen, when we disregard or ignore the other person's words, it can create emotional distance. Listening is a form of communication that often speaks louder than words. It is an act of validation, and it is a key ingredient in fostering genuine connection. In relationships where communication is lacking or where silence prevails, assumptions begin to take the place of understanding. Misinterpretations occur, and small issues balloon into larger conflicts. Without the clarity that communication provides, we are left to fill in the gaps with our own interpretations, which are often influenced by our fears, insecurities, or past experiences. This is why so many misunderstandings arise in relationships, because communication has not been clear, direct, or consistent. Without honest and open dialogue, we can easily drift apart, even when we are physically close to one another. Moreover, the absence of communication can make people feel invisible or unimportant. In a world where people are constantly seeking affirmation, acknowledgement, and connection, silence can be a painful form of rejection. When we fail to reach out, to speak up, or to show empathy, it can create an emotional void that leaves others feeling isolated. On the other hand, regular communication, whether through a simple check-in, a kind word, or an honest conversation, nourishes relationships and strengthens bonds. It reassures others that they are not alone, that they matter, and that they are valued. Effective communication is not just about speaking your mind or expressing your thoughts. It's about creating an environment of openness and understanding where others feel comfortable sharing theirs. It is about giving space for others to be themselves, to express their needs and desires, and to know that their voice will be heard. When communication is a two-way street, it fosters a mutual respect and creates a sense of unity. Without communication, even the closest relationships can become strained. Partners, friends, family members, and colleagues may find themselves drifting apart, not because of a lack of affection, but because they no longer understand one another. The absence of communication creates an emotional distance that can be as harmful as physical distance. In relationships where communication flows freely, however, people feel more connected, more secure, and more supported. They can navigate through difficulties together, celebrate successes together, and comfort one another through trials. At its core, communication is vital for maintaining connection, because it allows us to share not only our words but our hearts. It is the medium through which we express our emotions, establish trust, and show empathy. Without it, relationships stagnate. With it, they thrive. Communication is the thread that weaves us together, and when it is nurtured and practiced with intention, it creates deep, lasting connections that help us grow, heal, and truly understand one another. Unspoken words carry a weight that is often invisible but deeply felt. We tend to think of silence as merely the absence of speech, but in truth, silence can communicate volumes, sometimes more than words ever could. The weight of unspoken words is the emotional burden carried by what we fail to say, whether out of fear, discomfort, pride, or misunderstanding. These unspoken words can linger in the air like an unresolved tension, creating a space of uncertainty and leaving emotional scars that are not always visible but can be profoundly impactful. When we choose not to speak, especially in moments that require us to show care or empathy, we may unintentionally send a message that our thoughts or feelings don't matter, or worse, that the other person doesn't matter. This silence can feel like a rejection, For someone who is already vulnerable or in need, the absence of a word can feel like an emotional wound, a sense of being unheard or unseen. It's not just the lack of a response, it's the emotional void that is created when we fail to acknowledge the pain, confusion, or joy of another person. That void can make them feel isolated, abandoned, or even unworthy of our attention. Unspoken words also build up over time. What starts as a single, small omission, perhaps a failure to offer a kind word or to speak truthfully about a situation, can grow into a mountain of unresolved emotions. The more we hold back our thoughts, our feelings, or our needs, the heavier this unspoken weight becomes. It accumulates, silently affecting the relationship. What was once a minor issue or misunderstanding can become a festering wound when left unaddressed. Over time, this emotional baggage can lead to resentment, confusion, and a breakdown in trust. Because without communication, we don't know where we stand with each other. We start assuming things often inaccurately because we haven't been given the clarity or reassurance that comes from open dialogue. In intimate relationships, the weight of unspoken words is especially potent. Couples, family members, and close friends may think they understand each other, but when difficult emotions or unexpressed grievances go unspoken, they can create invisible walls. The fear of conflict or vulnerability often keeps us from expressing our true feelings, but in the process, we may inadvertently deepen the distance between ourselves and others. The failure to communicate honestly can create an emotional disconnect that erodes the trust and intimacy necessary for a healthy relationship. Sometimes it's not the words we say that cause harm, but the words we fail to say, the love we don't express, the concerns we leave unaddressed, or the apologies we withhold. The weight of unspoken words also affects our own emotional well-being. When we choose silence over honesty, we carry the burden of unresolved feelings. It can lead to internal conflict as we wrestle with guilt, frustration, or regret for not speaking up when we should have. The longer we stay silent, the harder it becomes to break that silence. We might fear that once we speak, the damage will be irreversible or that we will be judged for our silence. This fear of confrontation or vulnerability keeps us trapped in our own emotional turmoil, making the weight of unspoken words even more difficult to bear. Unspoken words are not neutral. They don't just disappear. They settle into the spaces between people, lingering in the background, creating an unspoken tension that colors our interactions. These unexpressed thoughts and feelings can shape our behavior, our perceptions of one another, and the quality of our relationships. When we fail to share what is in our hearts, we lose the opportunity to connect on a deeper level, to offer comfort, to seek forgiveness, or to express gratitude. And over time, this accumulation of silence can create emotional barriers that are far harder to dismantle than if we had addressed the unspoken words earlier. Understanding the weight of unspoken words is recognizing that silence, though sometimes necessary, can also be a powerful force that leaves its mark. It's important to ask ourselves, what are we withholding? What are we avoiding saying and why? And most importantly, who might be affected by the weight of our silence? Recognizing the power of unspoken words allows us to move beyond avoidance, to embrace honesty and vulnerability, and to offer the kind of communication that can heal, clarify, and strengthen the connections we share with others. The consequences of unexpressed feelings are far-reaching, affecting not only our emotional well-being, but also the quality of our relationships and even our physical health. When we suppress our emotions, whether out of fear, pride, or uncertainty, we carry an invisible weight that grows heavier over time. The simple act of not expressing what we feel, whether it's anger, sadness, disappointment, or even joy, can lead to a cascade of negative effects that ripple out in unexpected ways. At the heart of unexpressed feelings is often the fear of vulnerability. Many of us have been taught that certain emotions are too uncomfortable to share. Anger may seem like a sign of weakness. Sadness might be viewed as something we should get over. And joy might be downplayed in an effort to avoid seeming boastful. When we don't allow ourselves to express what we're truly feeling, we deny others the opportunity to understand us on a deeper level. What begins as a small, unspoken emotion can quickly snowball into something much more difficult to address, causing emotional tension, frustration, and resentment. One of the immediate consequences of unexpressed feelings is internalized stress. Our emotions are meant to be felt, understood, and processed. When we bottle them up, we disrupt the natural flow of emotional release. This emotional suppression creates an ongoing internal conflict where our body and mind are working overtime to manage the strain of unacknowledged emotions. The body responds to this stress in various ways through physical symptoms like headaches, muscle tension, fatigue, or digestive issues. Over time, chronic emotional suppression can lead to more severe health problems such as anxiety, depression, and even cardiovascular disease. The longer we hold our feelings inside, the harder it becomes for the body to cope, and the more damaging the impact on both our mental and physical health. In relationships, unexpressed feelings can be even more destructive. Whether in romantic partnerships, family dynamics, or friendships, the failure to communicate our emotions can lead to misunderstandings, emotional distance, and a breakdown in trust. When we don't share what we're feeling, those around us are left to guess, often misinterpreting our silence as disinterest, resentment, or indifference. For example, if one partner feels neglected but never expresses their frustration, the other might be unaware of the issue and continue behaving in ways that unintentionally cause harm. The unspoken feelings build up over time, and small grievances can evolve into significant conflicts, often resulting in feelings of hurt and betrayal that could have been avoided with open communication. The longer unexpressed feelings are ignored, the harder it becomes to confront them. Resentment can take root, turning minor issues into deep-seated animosities. This growing emotional distance often leads to a sense of isolation, where individuals feel misunderstood, disconnected, and unimportant. Even the closest relationships can suffer under the weight of suppressed emotions, as unspoken grievances can create barriers that prevent true intimacy. The inability or unwillingness to express feelings diminishes the possibility of emotional healing and prevents the relationship from growing stronger through honest, open dialogue. To creating emotional barriers, unexpressed feelings also prevent personal growth. Our emotions are powerful indicators of what we care about, what matters to us, and what we need. When we ignore or suppress these feelings, we deny ourselves the opportunity to learn from them, to understand why we feel a certain way, and to use that insight to grow. Expressing our emotions allows us to reflect on them, to gain clarity, and to make decisions that align with our values. By not expressing how we feel, we lose touch with our own emotional landscape and become less in tune with our needs and desires. This can result in a sense of stagnation, where we are not fully engaged with our own lives or with the people around us. Unexpressed feelings can lead to an overwhelming sense of emotional numbness. When we avoid dealing with our emotions for long enough, we can become desensitized to them. The more we suppress, the harder it becomes to connect with our feelings or to recognize the depth of our emotional experiences. This emotional numbness can erode our capacity for empathy, making it harder to connect with others on an emotional level. We might find ourselves going through the motions of life without truly feeling, without engaging in the kind of meaningful emotional exchanges that create deep, fulfilling connections. Even more damaging is the risk of creating a cycle of emotional suppression. The more we choose to bottle up our feelings, the more ingrained the habit becomes. We might start avoiding emotional conversations altogether, convincing ourselves that silence is easier, or that our feelings are not worth sharing. Over time, this avoidance becomes a defense mechanism that we rely on, further distancing us from others and from our own emotional truth. This cycle of suppression can cause a deep disconnect between our internal world and external reality, making it harder to express our needs or to connect authentically with others. The consequences of unexpressed feelings are not limited to the emotional and relational impacts. They have long-term implications for our sense of self and our overall well-being. When we don't express our feelings, we deny ourselves the opportunity to be truly seen and understood. We hide parts of ourselves, and in doing so, we prevent others from truly knowing us. This emotional disconnect can lead to feelings of inadequacy, insecurity, and loneliness. We might begin to believe that we are not worthy of being heard or that our feelings are not valid. Expressing our feelings, whether they are positive or negative, is crucial for maintaining emotional health, fostering deep connections with others, and growing as individuals. When we allow ourselves to feel and express what is in our hearts, we open the door to healing, understanding, and growth. The consequences of unexpressed feelings may be subtle at first, but over time, they accumulate into a weight that can be difficult to carry. Acknowledging and communicating our emotions, even when it feels difficult, is essential for living authentically and for nurturing the relationships that matter most. Empathy and compassion are the cornerstones of meaningful human connection, and they are more essential than ever in a world where people are often struggling with unseen battles. When we talk about empathy, we are referring to the ability to understand and share in the feelings of others, to put ourselves in their shoes, to feel their pain, their joy, and their sorrow. Compassion goes a step further. It is the act of responding to that understanding with kindness, care, and a desire to alleviate their suffering. Together, empathy and compassion form the foundation for healthy relationships, communities, and a more just and humane society. The call for empathy and compassion is not just about understanding others in the abstract or feeling pity for those who are struggling. It's about being actively present for people in their moments of need. It's about stepping outside of our own experiences and seeing the world through someone else's eyes. It's about recognizing that the pain and suffering others experience are just as real as our own. In a world where everyone is facing their own struggles, some visible, others hidden, the need for empathy and compassion has never been greater. Too often we get caught up in our own busy lives, preoccupied with our personal challenges, our responsibilities, and our aspirations. In doing so, we can forget that the people around us are also navigating their own difficulties, fears, and heart attachments. Empathy calls us to pause, to listen, and to be present for others. It reminds us that everyone is carrying some kind of burden, and that we are all human, vulnerable, and imperfect. When we respond to others with empathy, we acknowledge their humanity and make space for them to be seen, heard, and understood. But empathy alone is not enough. It's easy to feel someone's pain or to understand their perspective, but without compassion, empathy becomes stagnant. Compassion compels us to act. It moves us from understanding to doing. Compassion isn't just about feeling for someone, it's about reaching out with words or actions that help ease their suffering. Whether that means offering a listening ear, providing practical support, or simply offering a word of encouragement. Compassion involves taking the time to comfort, to help, and to make the person in pain feel less alone in their struggle. In relationships, empathy and compassion build trust and intimacy. They are the glue that binds people together in moments of vulnerability. When we show empathy, we offer a safe space for others to open up, knowing that they won't be judged, dismissed, or invalidated. We create an environment where emotional honesty can flourish, where people feel supported and understood rather than isolated or misunderstood. This is especially important in times of crisis or difficulty, when individuals are more likely to retreat into themselves out of fear of being rejected or ignored. Compassion helps break down those walls, showing others that they are valued and worthy of our attention. However, empathy and compassion aren't just reactive responses to someone else's pain. They are proactive qualities that we can cultivate within ourselves every day. Being empathetic and compassionate doesn't require waiting for someone to ask for help. It means being attuned to the emotional currents around us, noticing when someone is struggling, and offering our support even before they've spoken about their pain. It means being aware of the needs of those around us, whether it's a friend going through a tough time, a colleague dealing with stress, or even a stranger who looks like they're having a bad day. There is also a deeper universal call for empathy and compassion that goes beyond our immediate relationships. The world is full of suffering, war, poverty, injustice, inequality, and countless other forms of hardship that many people face every day. Empathy challenges us to recognize that the pain of others is our collective pain, and that the suffering of one is the suffering of all. Compassion moves us to act on that understanding, whether it's by advocating for change, donating to causes that alleviate suffering, or offering kindness to those who need it most. Our ability to empathize with others and to respond with compassion can spark a ripple effect, creating a wave of goodwill that spreads far beyond our immediate circles. But empathy and compassion are not always easy. They require us to be vulnerable, to face discomfort, and sometimes to confront our own biases and judgments. It can be challenging to empathize with someone whose experiences or beliefs are vastly different from our own. It can be difficult to respond with compassion when we feel emotionally drained or when the problems we're facing seem insurmountable. Yet, it is in these moments of difficulty that empathy and compassion become even more powerful. They allow us to transcend our own struggles and to connect with the humanity in others, regardless of our differences. Showing empathy and compassion isn't just about helping others, it's about healing ourselves. When we show kindness and understanding, we not only lift the spirits of others, but we also cultivate a sense of purpose and fulfillment within ourselves. There is a deep sense of joy and satisfaction that comes from knowing we've made a positive difference in someone else's life, whether through a simple gesture or a more profound act of care. Compassionate actions also strengthen our own emotional resilience as they remind us of our capacity for love, connection, and generosity. The call for empathy and compassion is a call to action. A call to be more present, more understanding, and more willing to help. It's a call to recognize that we are all part of a greater whole, and that when one person suffers, we all suffer. It's a call to be open to the vulnerability of others, to listen without judgment, and to act with kindness and care. In a world that often feels disconnected, empathy and compassion are the bridges that unite us. They allow us to see beyond our differences and to connect at the deepest level of our shared humanity. It is empathy and compassion that make the world a better place. They have the power to heal emotional wounds, to foster strong and meaningful relationships, and to create a sense of belonging and community. These qualities are not just virtues, they are necessities. They are the antidote to the isolation and indifference that so often define modern life. When we answer the call for empathy and compassion, we move closer to a world where people feel valued, understood, and supported, where no one has to face their struggles alone. The choice between speaking up and staying silent is a powerful one, and the consequences of either decision can be far-reaching, both for ourselves and for those around us. In moments of tension, conflict, or emotional need, deciding whether to voice our thoughts or remain silent can shape the course of a relationship, an opportunity, or even a life. While silence can sometimes be a wise and necessary response, there are countless situations where speaking up is not only beneficial but essential for our well-being and the well-being of others. Staying silent may seem like the easier option in many cases. It's often the default response when we're uncertain, afraid of conflict, or unsure of how our words will be received. Silence can provide a temporary sense of relief or protection, shielding us from potential judgment, criticism, or confrontation. In some situations, silence can be a form of self-preservation, allowing us to step back and process our emotions before reacting. It can also create space for reflection and introspection, giving us the time to carefully consider our words and their impact. When emotions are running high, staying silent can prevent hasty, thoughtless remarks that we may later regret. However, prolonged silence, especially in the face of injustice, misunderstanding, or emotional distress, can have significant negative consequences. When we stay silent in the face of wrongdoing or emotional harm, we may unintentionally condone behaviors that hurt others or damage relationships. Silence can be perceived as indifference, a lack of support, or even complicity. In relationships, withholding our feelings can lead to misunderstandings, resentment, and emotional distance. If we don't speak up about what we're experiencing, whether it's a need for space, a desire for closeness, or frustration with the way things are, we risk allowing our feelings to fester, creating a barrier that may be hard to break down later. Furthermore, silence can often rob us of the opportunity to be truly understood. When we withhold our thoughts or feelings, we keep others at arm's length, denying them the chance to truly know us or offer the support we need. People can't read our minds if we want to connect with others. If we want to express our needs, fears, or desires, we must be willing to speak up. Staying silent, especially in difficult situations, can cause isolation, emotional alienation, and a deep sense of being misunderstood or ignored. We may find ourselves feeling invisible, unable to engage authentically with those around us. On the other hand, speaking up, expressing ourselves openly and honestly can lead to connection, healing, and resolution. When we speak up, we give others the opportunity to understand our point of view, our emotions, and our needs. By sharing our thoughts, we invite dialogue, which can foster mutual understanding and deeper empathy. In relationships, speaking up can strengthen bonds, especially when it's done with care and respect. It shows others that we trust them enough to be vulnerable to share what's on our minds and in our hearts. It also opens the door for constructive conflict, where differences can be addressed and resolved rather than left to simmer and cause ongoing tension. However, speaking up can also come with risks. It requires vulnerability and courage, and not everyone is prepared to listen with empathy and understanding. There's always the possibility of rejection, judgment, or miscommunication. Sometimes our words may not be received as we intended, and we might face difficult or uncomfortable responses. Yet, even with these risks, speaking up is often the healthier, more productive choice in the long run. Bottling up our feelings, avoiding difficult conversations, or staying silent out of fear may prevent immediate discomfort, but it rarely leads to resolution or growth. The longer we stay silent, the harder it becomes to find the right words, and the more entrenched our misunderstandings become. Speaking up also has a profound impact on our sense of self-worth and authenticity. When we speak our truth, we assert our own voice, showing ourselves and us that our thoughts, feelings, and perspectives matter. Silence may keep us safe from conflict, but speaking up enables us to engage fully in life, to advocate for ourselves, and to establish clear boundaries. It empowers us to live in alignment with our values and to contribute meaningfully to the conversations around us. The decision to speak up or stay silent depends on the context, the individuals involved, and the potential impact of our words. In some situations, silence is necessary for processing emotions or for choosing the right moment to speak. But in situations where our voice can make a difference, where speaking up can prevent harm or foster understanding, silence can become a form of neglect, both to ourselves and to others. Finding the balance between speaking up and staying silent is a crucial aspect of emotional intelligence and healthy communication. Both choices have their place, and understanding when to use each is key to navigating the complexities of human relationships. When we speak up with clarity, honesty, and respect, we offer the possibility of growth, connection, and healing. And when we choose silence in a thoughtful, intentional way, we honor the need for reflection, space, and patience. The choice between speaking up and staying silent is not always easy, but it's one that shapes how we engage with the world, with others, and with ourselves. Responsibility in relationships is about more than just fulfilling obligations. It is the foundation of trust, mutual respect, and emotional safety. It requires an active, intentional commitment to the well-being of both ourselves and the people we're in relationship with, whether in romantic partnerships, friendships, family dynamics, or professional connections. Responsibility means recognizing that we are not just individuals living separate lives, but that our actions, words, and behaviors directly affect others, and in turn, they affect us. It involves owning our actions and choices, being accountable for how we show up, and taking the necessary steps to maintain healthy, supportive, and balanced connections. At its core, responsibility in relationships means taking ownership of our part in the dynamics that unfold. In any relationship, there is a shared space and emotional and psychological terrain where both individuals interact, influence, and impact each other. While it's easy to point fingers or place blame when things go wrong, taking responsibility means acknowledging that we too play a role in shaping the relationship. It means recognizing that our words and actions, whether intentional or not, have an impact on the emotional climate of the relationship. For instance, if a relationship experiences tension, miscommunication, or conflict, taking responsibility means not just looking at the other person's flaws or mistakes, but also examining our own role in the situation. Did we communicate clearly? Did we listen with empathy? Were we honest and vulnerable, or did we hide our feelings? Taking responsibility in this way invites introspection and accountability. It encourages us to be open to feedback, to admit when we've been wrong, and to apologize when necessary. It's about being aware that relationships require effort from both parties, and that it's not just one person's job to make things work. It's a shared responsibility. In addition to owning our actions, responsibility in relationships also means respecting the boundaries and needs of the other person. Healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, which includes honoring each other's time, energy, and emotional limits. This means being considerate of the other person's needs, understanding that they are not responsible for fulfilling all of our desires, and recognizing that their feelings, thoughts, and boundaries are as valid as our own. It also means being emotionally available and supportive, especially during difficult times. Responsibility in relationships involves offering empathy, being present, and being willing to put the other person's needs before our own at times, while also ensuring that our own needs are acknowledged and met. One of the most important aspects of responsibility in relationships is clear communication. It is our responsibility to express our thoughts, feelings, and concerns openly and honestly. Misunderstandings often arise when people fail to communicate effectively, leaving one person in the dark about the other's feelings or intentions. Whether it's expressing love, confronting an issue, or simply checking in, taking responsibility means being proactive in communicating. It also means listening with intention and without judgment. The responsibility to listen, to truly hear what the other person is saying, and to empathize with their experience may be just as important as the responsibility to speak our truth. Listening is an act of respect, And in healthy relationships, it is just as vital as the act of speaking. In romantic relationships, responsibility often involves the delicate balance of caring for the other person while maintaining our sense of individuality. We have a responsibility to nurture our connection with our partner, but also to ensure that we are taking care of ourselves. This includes emotional self-care, setting boundaries, and pursuing our own personal growth. By taking responsibility for our own emotional health, we ensure that we are able to show up fully for our partner, offering love and support without compromising our own well-being. In friendships and family dynamics, responsibility also means being present for others, providing support, and offering encouragement. But it also means recognizing when it's time to give space or to step back. It requires us to strike a balance between giving and receiving, knowing that relationships are reciprocal and that both people have needs, challenges, and limitations. Taking responsibility in relationships means being accountable for how we handle conflict. Conflict is an inevitable part of any relationship, but how we navigate it determines the strength of the bond. A responsible approach to conflict means remaining calm, respectful, and solution-oriented. It's about addressing issues with care, not letting anger or frustration dictate our responses, and being willing to compromise or adjust our behavior when needed. Avoiding conflict or ignoring issues only prolongs problems, leading to misunderstandings or resentment. Responsibility in conflict means taking the initiative to address problems head-on and to work together toward resolution, rather than allowing the situation to fester. Perhaps one of the greatest challenges of responsibility in relationships is balancing our own needs with those of others. Relationships thrive when both parties take responsibility for their well-being and growth. But it's easy to fall into the trap of neglecting our own emotional needs in favor of accommodating others. Responsibility, in this sense, means recognizing that we must also care for ourselves, not only for our own health and happiness, but also so that we can give more fully to others. This may involve setting healthy boundaries, saying no when necessary, or asking for what we need. Being responsible in a relationship means not losing ourselves in the process of caring for someone else, but rather ensuring that both parties have the space to grow, thrive, and support each other in meaningful ways. Responsibility in relationships isn't just about the big, defining moments. It's also about the small, everyday actions that contribute to the overall health of the connection. It's in the thoughtfulness of a text message, the willingness to listen without interrupting, the gesture of making someone's favorite meal, or offering support when it's least expected. These seemingly minor acts of responsibility compound over time, strengthening the bond and fostering the sense of trust and mutual respect. Responsibility in relationships is an ongoing practice, one that requires commitment, effort, and emotional maturity. It is about taking ownership of how we engage with others, being accountable for our actions, and showing up with integrity, empathy, and respect. Relationships, whether they are with family, friends, or romantic partners, are built on a foundation of responsibility to each other's well-being, emotional needs, and mutual growth. When we approach relationships with this sense of responsibility, we create a space where both people feel valued, heard, and supported, fostering deeper connections and more fulfilling interactions. Active listening and thoughtful response are essential components of effective communication, and their importance cannot be overstated, especially in building strong, meaningful relationships. Too often we think of listening as something passive, where we simply hear words without fully engaging with the speaker. But active listening is far more than just hearing what someone says. It's about being fully present, engaging with the speaker on a deep emotional level, and responding in ways that validate and encourage further communication. It's a skill that demands focus, patience, and genuine empathy, qualities that, when cultivated, can transform how we connect with others. Active listening requires that we suspend our own thoughts, judgments, and responses long enough to truly understand what the other person is trying to convey. It means paying attention not just to the words being spoken, but also to the tone, body language, and emotions behind those words. Too often, we are tempted to jump in with our own opinions, solutions, or advice before fully understanding the other person's perspective. But this can shut down the conversation, leaving the speaker feeling unheard, misunderstood, or even invalidated. Active listening, on the other hand, creates an environment where the speaker feels safe to express themselves without fear of interruption or judgment. A key part of active listening is being present in the moment. In our fast-paced world, distractions abound, and it's easy to check out mentally during conversations, even if we're physically present. Whether it's checking our phones, thinking about what we need to do next, or planning our response, distractions can undermine the quality of our listening. To truly listen, we must focus all of our attention on the speaker, setting aside our distractions and tuning into the nuances of the conversation. This shows the other person that we respect their words and are interested in what they have to say. It also enables us to fully absorb the information, picking up on emotions and meanings that might otherwise be missed. Equally important is the response we give after listening. A thoughtful, engaged response lets the speaker know that their message has been received and understood. It also encourages deeper connection by demonstrating that we value their perspective and are willing to engage with it. Responses should go beyond simple acknowledgement or agreement. Instead, they should reflect an understanding of the speaker's feelings or the underlying issues at hand. For example, instead of merely saying, "I understand," a more meaningful response might be, "I can hear how frustrated you are about this situation," or "It sounds like you're feeling overwhelmed." These kinds of responses show that we are not just passively hearing, but actively engaging with the speaker's emotional state, creating an atmosphere of empathy and support. Active listening is also crucial for resolving conflicts and navigating difficult conversations. In moments of disagreement, emotions can run high, and it's easy to become defensive or reactive. But when we listen actively, we give the other person the space to express their point of view without fear of being cut off or dismissed. We listen not with the intention of formulating a counter-argument, but with the goal of truly understanding their perspective. By doing so, we can approach the situation with more empathy, uncovering the root causes of the conflict and finding common ground. In turn, our responses will be more measured and constructive, focused on finding solutions rather than escalating the tension. Another key element of active listening is asking clarifying questions. Sometimes the speaker may not be clear, or we may need more information to fully understand their point. Rather than making assumptions or jumping to conclusions, asking thoughtful questions helps to clarify the speaker's message and ensures we're on the same page. It also shows the speaker that we are invested in understanding them completely. For example, ask him, "What do you mean when you say that?" Or, "Can you help me understand why this is important to you?" Opens up space for the speaker to elaborate and for the listener to gain deeper insight. In relationships, whether personal or professional, the need for active listening is paramount. It is through active listening that we form stronger bonds with others, validate their feelings, and create an environment of trust and mutual respect. When we listen actively, we let others know that their voices matter, that we are present and invested in their thoughts and emotions. This fosters openness, reduces misunderstandings, and builds rapport. In contrast, when we fail to listen actively when we're distracted, dismissive, or uninterested, it undermines the relationship, causing frustration, confusion, and even resentment. Active listening is not just about understanding what others are saying, it's about learning from them and growing together. Listening is an essential tool for personal and professional development because it opens us up to new perspectives, ideas, and insights. In a workplace, for example, active listening fosters collaboration and innovation by encouraging diverse voices and viewpoints. In personal relationships, it deepens emotional intimacy as both parties feel heard and understood. The need for active listening also extends to our ability to support others in times of difficulty. When someone is going through a tough time, whether it's grief, stress, or personal challenges, they don't always need solutions or advice. Often they simply need someone to listen. Active listening in these moments is an act of compassion, allowing the speaker to feel validated and less alone in their struggle. A supportive response might be, "I'm so sorry you're going through this," or "I'm here for you, and I'm listening." This kind of listening builds a sense of solidarity and comfort, helping the person feel seen and supported. The need for active listening and response is a critical aspect of healthy, effective communication. It goes beyond hearing words. It's about engaging with the speaker's emotions, perspectives, and needs. By listening attentively and responding thoughtfully, we create connections that are deeper, more empathetic, and more understanding. Active listening is an essential tool for resolving conflict, offering support, and building trust in all kinds of relationships. It's a skill that requires practice and intention, but pays dividends in the form of stronger, more meaningful connections with others. Our silence can hurt more than we realize, and the words we choose or fail to choose carry the power to either build bridges or create barriers. Every moment we remain silent when we should speak, every time we choose not to listen or withhold our truth, we risk causing emotional harm, sometimes to those we love most. Relationships thrive on open communication, empathy, and the willingness to engage with each other, not only in the easy moments, but especially in the difficult ones. We have a responsibility to be present, to actively listen, and to speak with intention, kindness, and understanding. The call to action is clear. Don't let silence become your default. And don't let your words go unsaid when they have the power to heal, to support, and to transform. Speak up when it matters, not just for your own well-being, but for the well-being of those around you. Listen deeply, without judgment, and respond with empathy. Remember, the strength of any relationship lies not in the absence of conflict, but in the willingness to face it with honesty, vulnerability, and respect. Let us be a voice for those who feel unheard and a presence for those who feel unseen. Let us choose to speak, not from a place of anger or frustration, but from a place of compassion and understanding. When we embrace the power of our words and the responsibility of active listening, we create connections that heal, that uplift, and that endure. The time to speak up and to listen is now, because silence too often is hurting them deeply. It is our responsibility to change that.